Hello, everybody. It's really so lovely to,
Hey, Doug,
oh, wait.
mind the
Yes. Okay. I'll just start again. And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being on our first Women Power session for the year. And I can't believe it's already April. And yes, it's gone really fast. I'm Natalie Isaacs. I am the founder of 1 Million Women. And um, I actually I actually don't know what land I'm speaking to you from because I'm usually in Wollongong and on Dharawal country, and I'm usually speaking to you from, I'm sandwiched in between the beautiful escarpment and the Pacific Ocean, and I know my place, but I have just left Coffs Harbour and I've just arrived at the Gold Coast and I've jumped into this chair and I actually don't know what land I'm speaking to you from. So I'm going to do where I live and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future. And just know that you know this relationship that we have with the earth is so important. And we take that wisdom from our First Nations peoples, and we know that, that the land and the oceans and the waterways are living systems, and that's what we are fighting for. And so thank you so much again for being part of Women Power. I'm really excited about tonight's discussion with Felicia, the expert on everything there is to know about draft proofing, and we will really get into such a great discussion. But what I wanted to do to kick things off is just to give you a bit of an update on the incredible work that we have been doing at 1 Million Women. I know you're all part of it, and so you've seen everything that we've been doing this year on household electrification. Earlier this year, well, actually just last month, no, February, we took a delegation to Canberra of 23 women to talk about our 1 Million Women policy, which is about getting 1 million households to electrify over the next 3 years and to get government support for that. We had 26 meetings in 3 days with politicians across the political spectrum, and it was such an amazing time. We know, all of us on this call, we know that household electrification is a win-win, and we know that we think that every politician in this country can get behind it, and that's why we went to Canberra, and that's why we had those meetings. And just in the last couple of weeks, we launched our election campaign called She Votes, and it is about prioritizing clean, affordable energy now. And I hope you've all seen She Votes. It's so beautiful. It's got some really strong messaging. We've been sending out lots of emails. We'd love you all engaged with it. And we will send out links again at the end of this call. And in the last couple of days, Bree and I have just done community events. Last night we were in Coffs Harbour. We had almost 200 women at the pub talking about household electrification with the candidates and what their policies are. And so it's been a really big year. And yeah, and here we are again, and we're on this call. And what I would love to do before we kick things off is just for a moment, could everybody pop their videos on? Could you say hello in the chat? Could we take a photo of us all? Because this is what we love to do, and we love to put it up on our socials that this is Women Power. And just for a moment, pop your videos on. Let's all say hello. And just if you want to say in the chat where you're from, that would be really beautiful. And then we'll just say hello, take a photo, and then we'll relax into the evening. So pop your videos on. And hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Hello, hello. And we're going to take a screenshot. Hello. Um, And I don't know if you've seen where we've got lots of community online events happening over the next couple of weeks. And if you are in any of the electorates that we've got them on, we would love to see you on the call. So, um, anyway, lovely to see you all. And I think that's it from me tonight. I'm going to hand over to Bree, who's going to introduce our wonderful partner, Felicia from Enviroflex. So thank you so much, everybody. And over to you, Bree.
All right. Hello, everyone. And yeah, as Nat said, thanks so much for joining us. We've been very busy, so we're um, very excited that we could kick off this sort of year's sessions of Women Power with the incredible Enviroflex. We love what they do, we love what they stand for, and we really want to get into just all about how we can make our homes more comfortable. Um, so if you've never heard of Enviroflex before, they're an incredible team dedicated to insulation, and they're committed to improving, your home's comfort while reducing the energy costs, which, we all love, and that's what we're very keen to get into with all of our electrification things. When you make all these changes in your home, you want to know that your home um, as you're making as much, you're getting as much benefit from all of the changes that you're making. So that's where installation comes into it. And Enviroflex are very trusted partners that we're very keen to have on board. They've got long-term experience with this. Felicia, who you'll hear from all tonight, has years and years of experience dealing with this in this role and also advocating for better insulation policy and such. So we're very lucky to have her on the call and her expertise. And I hope if you have any detailed questions. I feel like it's sometimes when electrification is a big topic, it's kind of hard to figure out what we're going to focus on, but it's nice that this session could be all about the nitty gritty of insulation. So very excited to welcome Felicia Richardson.
Oh, look, thank you so much, Brie, and thank you, Natalie, and thank you guys for the opportunity to come along and talk to you all. So I took over Enviroflex about 8 years ago. I was not from the industry. I was an ex-management consultant, and I came in to do some management consulting. And what I recognised was insulation companies typically they were incredibly focused on new builds because it was an easy market and it was quite simple, and it had certain business practices that made it very light touch, you know quite good margin, that kind of stuff. But what I saw was the opportunity in the retrofit market and recognizing the poor standards of our building envelopes in Australia. And I just wish I had a dollar for every time that I've spoken to someone who's come in from overseas, be they from the UK or the US or Canada or other parts of Europe, and they tell me, yeah, I've never been as cold in my life as I am in Australia. So, look, the poor building practices of the past have meant that we have this legacy that we need to deal with. So insulation only became mandatory in Australia in 2002. So, which I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of thinking, apart from Bree, we're probably not similar kinds of ages. So you can imagine that the stock that actually requires retrofitting just to bring it up to a base standard is huge. And one of the things I recognised was that the uh, the skills involved in retrofitting were quite different from that of new build. But look, it's a really exciting time, and to me, the retrofitting is absolutely so critical to us achieving our carbon emissions targets. It is the low-hanging fruit, creating an environment which is healthy for your in your home, basically by draft sealing and by undertaking insulation. You will reduce your energy bills. You will be so much healthier, and all of these all of these different benefits. So, but I am going way off script, and which my dear marketing person Nick is way used to me doing, but she is in control of the slideshow. So we might be bouncing around a little bit. I'm very into interactive presentations. I actually really thrive off the energy that I get back. So, guys, if you've got anything on the fly, please throw it up. Nick, let's go. So, firstly, I just follow up with what Nat said, just an acknowledgement of country. I know that we're from all around the country today, pretty much. I'm sitting at the moment, I've just come back from Sydney. I'm back in Melbourne. And, look, I just want to recognise our elders, past, present, and emerging. And, the lands were never ceded. So, Nick, if we can. So, one of the big things for me is there's lots of really sexy things that you can do, right, in terms of your electrification journey. But the biggest thing that you can do is to create a solid thermal envelope. How do you do that? You do that by draft sealing and insulating your home. And once you do, and that is the most cost-effective thing that you can do. And it will give you the quickest payback by so far that the rest doesn't matter. And it's really interesting to me. So if we were to have a look at things like induction's fun and it's sexy and all that kind of stuff. But if you're already electric, induction doesn't get you much of a payback. So all I can really encourage you to do is have a look at your drafts first, because even if you insulate, if you've effectively got a window open, and gaps under your doors are that big, the airflow will mean that it's not an effective thermal envelope. And all you're going to be doing by running your RC AC is actually going to be heating the environment. That's all you're going to be doing. I heard something years ago, and it was one of the most. It was such a simple thing, and I hope that this helps you all to think about heating and cooling and thermal transference. But the heat wants everything to be the same temperature as it. And so as a result, it will run to wherever it can to try and equalize temperature. So if you have even a very small gap in your insulation and your thermal envelope, the heat will run to it, be that to come inside or to go outside. That's something to think about. So from our perspective, what we do insulation removal, we do sealing underfloor and insulation installation. We also do a specialized retrofit cavity, so you don't need to take your plaster off your wall to actually have insulation in your walls anymore. We come along and there's a video of it shortly where we show how we use machines to pump insulation into your walls. And as I said, we do draft proofing. Sorry, and here I go about as I just said where I jump all over the spot and Nick has a heart attack. Um, the big thing about heat, as I said, is it will run to wherever it needs to equalize. Somebody used the example to me once. It's like a cup of tea that you have sitting on your table, and the heat will actually escape trying to equalize. And I thought it was such a fantastic analogy. I was actually up, many of you would know Jenny Edwards. I was up with Jenny and Leash well, actually, funnily enough, for your thing, Natalie, but up in Canberra, but spent a couple of days up there with them. And we were running around doing some blower door tests, and it was really interesting. The issue with drafts cannot be understated. So we did this test on a house, and the house had been insulated within an inch of its life, but it had just gaps everywhere. And the test that they do uh, then translates into, like, there's all the scientific stuff that goes with it, right? But then they actually translate it into this house had effectively a 33 centimeter by 33 centimeter um, hole in their wall. So it's impossible for you to maintain a comfortable thermal temperature when you've basically got a gap that is that big. Once again, cheapest thing that you can do, and you can do it yourself, is basically doing draft proofing. And quite frankly, if you're even tiny bit handy, and what I know about women is women who choose to undertake a task like this are so pedantic. I would and so clever with it. I'd really recommend you check out the EcoMaster website, actually. And they have a lot of videos that can show you how to do things. But you work that out. Now, there's lots and lots of conjecture. So obviously, Nick has pulled this slide together for me, and it is really, really true. If you having a solid thermal envelope means your appliance is going to have to work a lot less hard, kind of thing. Now I could show you other slides where this is understated. And in fact, the Victorian Energy Upgrades program just recently published something that said that 35% of your heat either comes in or goes out of your ceiling. Yes, 20% in the walls, and a lot more on the underfloor. So, as always, there's always variations in statistics. So what does this tell me, though? Is that the first priority that you have is to, obviously, the draft proofing, but then to actually make sure that you have decent ceiling insulation. Now, many of us, as I said, 2002 in Australia it became mandatory, but many of us, though, have low levels of insulation in our roofs. So it wasn't that long ago that even if you had you had R25 or something like that, it was considered quite the thing, right? And 8 years ago, when I took over Enviroflex, R4 was considered, you know, the was fantastic. Now R4 is the National Construction Code minimum, and I would highly recommend you plan for the future, because when you do insulation, the when you do undertake any insulation project, half of it basically is sunk cost in terms of the retrofit space. So and the labor that goes with it. So I'd really encourage you to look at upping your insulation in terms of the R value. Now I'm gonna be a bit naughty here, Nick, and I'm gonna say, do we have a slide that talks about the R value, or shall I just? Oh, and there's one we prepared earlier. So R value is the resistance value, and it's a resistance to the heat transference, be that internal or external. And different R values are recommended to different climates, obviously. So the colder it is, the higher the R value, the tighter the thermal envelope needs to be. It's an ongoing discussion, basically. But once again, if you're going to undertake retrofit works, I would highly recommend you have a think about doing an R6. It's you know it it'll be the new R4 kind of thing. Like what is it? 50 is the new 30 kind of thing. So highly recommend you have a look at that. Don't underestimate the payback in having a really good thermal envelope. It's unique. Think I've spoken a lot about draft proofing and once again pumping not just our works, but if you are handy, EcoMaster have some fantastic products. They're manufactured in Australia, and they have videos to enable you to do it as well. Just on the Australian manufacturing thing, so one of the things that Enviroflex does is we support Australian manufacturing ongoing. So obviously, if you're going to choose an insulation installer, and obviously we'd love you to choose us, but in the absence of that, please do a couple of things. Have a look at the quality of the product and don't rely on what the sales guys say to you and all that kind of stuff. Look at the Australian standards. Make sure that the Australian standards are being met and use a really good quality installer. And I'll rabbit on about that in a minute because I'm jumping all over the shop and Nick's going to get upset with me.
Alicia, we had a question from
Yeah.
Elizabeth in the chat that said, what if you live in a hot summer? What R number do you need? The winter's not cold.
Sorry, is that in Queensland or Northern Territory or
WA.
But Northern. Look, it's interesting. So we're looking at a program at the moment that's going to retrofit social housing through Far North WA, and what they're looking at is an R7 at the moment.
And why is that, Felicia? Why R7?
Oh, just because of the heat, the heat and the cold. I mean, it's just so extreme. So, and once again, going back to it, if you have a solid thermal envelope, you can lock out the climate effectively as long as you keep everything sealed. You can lock out the climate. That's really key.
So everything
Right.
on the higher end is for both hot and cold if you have extreme temperatures.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, heat transference. So be it coming in or going out. So it just stops that. It's a buffer. Now, going back to insulation though, sorry, when we have a look at, if you have a look at a bat, insulation is interesting. I describe it, be it acoustic or be it thermal. What you want is the energy to change shape as much as possible. So energy has to change shape every time it hits a different substrate. So, or a different texture. So this is why you get bridging. So if you have a solid mass and you, for example, knock on something that's solid, it transfers straight through. But if you have where it has to change, the energy has to change shape, it basically it dissipates. So when you look at a bat, if you have a look at a bat that's R25, it's really not very super deep kind of thing. If you have a look at a bat that's R6, it's a lot deeper. And there are air gaps. So you have not only obviously the glass wool or polyester or whatever it is you choose to use, but you then having to go through air pockets, then back through product, then back through air pockets, and things like that. And that's actually what gives you your decent RV. Now, on that, I mean, one of the big things is the necessity for whatever insulation product you use to not be cramped and compromised. Because for exactly the reason I just said, it's the air pockets as well as the product that actually give it its value. So if it gets cramped and if it gets squashed, you don't have that, and it's a reduction in the value.
Can you just explain what, sorry, can you explain?
Sorry, sorry, was I not clear? Sorry, yeah.
Can you explain what cramped, what cramped means? Like, I know what cramped means.
Oh, no, but
Explain.
beautiful. So actually, Nick's just put up this video now, and hopefully this kind of explains it perfectly. Hang on, I'm gonna have to sneeze. I'm sorry. Um, sorry. That explains it. Oh, actually, here we go. This explains it kind of perfectly. So the pink bats down on the bottom, you can see that they're not squashed. They sit, sorry, perfectly non-compressed, and they basically do exactly what you would expect them to do. If they are compressed, as I said, the bat is compromised. They should be sitting flush like that. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Or conversely, you can see above that we have a blowing solution, which depending on your roof cavity and what your requirements are, might be a better solution. But once again, you can see the loft that's in that. It's not squashed. So it's when you squash and you compress, you remove the air to product ratio, that you actually diminish the quality of the insulation installed. Now, I think we're about to tick over to the Enviroflex difference. Would that be right, Nick? No. Oh. So Nick is now just pulling up our retrofit cavity wall insulation. Now, this is a little bit of video from a gentleman who actually used to run the EEC, the Energy Efficiency Council. It just shows you how we do the retrofit cavity wall insulation, so without taking off the plaster. This is a brick veneer house, and the guys are drilling little holes in between each of the noggins in the construct of the house to then use our machines to pump a silicon treated glass wool solution into the walls. How is that important? Well, basically, the silicon treatment means that it doesn't attract moisture. So, even if the house becomes sodden, it will actually still drain. So we use a canal product called Superfill, but have in the past also used rock wool, which is a great product as well. So the all I can say to you is it is far cheaper to be doing that than it is for you to be ripping the plaster off. One thing that we didn't touch on there, and sorry, as the video was skipping along, I was thinking about it. We showed a brick veneer substrate, and we showed drilling through the mortar. We do that as well with a double brick, and doing that with those, it's easy because then all we need to do is go back and plug the holes, matching the mortar. Quite easy. You don't see anything. But we also do it for a lot of weatherboards as well. And so we drill holes through the weatherboards and pump the insulation in there. So obviously when it's either through the weatherboards or we can go internally, you need to sand it back and you need to replaster it. But very easy through mortar. Now, the R values that you achieve vary based on the size of the cavity. So in a brick veneer, you tend to have a really pretty good cavity. So we can actually end up with an R value of around R27, which is good, which is, basically a new build kind of standard at the moment. honestly, double brick can vary a little bit in terms of the size of the cavity and the outcomes that you achieve. But once again, far easier, far cheaper than removing the plaster and having a go. So, all things to think about.
Felicia, just going back to the standards. Andrea wants to know what would be the Queensland standards.
Andrea, that is a really interesting question at the moment because I amongst others of my peers, we contributed to the National Construction Code, and Queensland have will not be adapting the National Construction Code changes that have been recommended, as with a couple of states, I must add. Um, so Victoria and New South Wales hit up to R4 as a basic minimum. And as I say, Queensland and a couple of other states have actually decided not to. I always find this interesting, right? Because I would have thought a national mandate would be a national mandate. It's kind of like me sitting there and saying, I don't want to pay tax. I don't pay income tax. You know, it's a bit insane. It's something that it's just general. But what I would encourage you to do is jump onto because Queensland's a very big state, jump onto, do some Googling, basically, in terms of your region, because it varies. And it will likely vary depending on your home construct and your ventilation. And so in Victoria, for example, we want to shut down a lot of our ventilation. But I understand, from a Queenslander kind of perspective, a lot of what you rely on to cool your homes is actually keeping an airflow. So highly recommend jump online. I can't tell you what the website is in Queensland, but there will be one if you Google it. So insulation standards for Australian regions would be the Google.
Um, I have another question. You were talking about the fix-it checks and
Yeah.
when you were going around doing the testing, how were you testing? What were you using?
Oh, blower door. Blower door.
Blower
That
door.
was a blower door. Sorry. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. So it was a blower door test. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, so basically what you do is you go and you fix a door with a fan on it. Sorry, you fix to the door frame a oh, gosh, I'm gonna say it's like a tent. But it's a cover with a fan that you then use to extract the air out of a house.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, though, what happens is every leak becomes apparent because the air rushes in to try and equalize the pressure. Not similar to what heat does, right? But the air will rush in. So you can actually feel the air rushing through and you can work out really clearly where your leaks are. To that end, when we talk about solid thermal envelopes, highly recommend you ladies to think about going to your local library, and many of them now have thermal cameras that you can hire and run around and shoot your house and just see where you're bleeding in terms of energy efficiency. The the key to that, honestly, is read the instructions. The if the sorry, if there's not a big enough differential between the internal and the external, it won't show. You'll end up with a false positive reading. So you really need there to end up being you know, reasonable difference in temperature, so you can actually see where it's all leaking. Now, traps for young players in terms of you looking at insulation would be things like you want your installer to cover your manhole with a bat. Sounds stupid, but you'd be amazed how many don't. They go out and they might lay insulation in the roof, and they come out and they think, "Oh, job done." But you've got this huge gap that the weather will transfer through. Um, there's all of these different things for you to have a look at, basically. The Your insulation should run, not only be cut to fit without being squashed, like I talked about before, but it should also run to the edge of the top plate of your construct. So here's my wall, my external wall. There's my roof line, kind of thing. And the insulation should go to what we call the top plate. And if you have, for example, an R6 bat that is super deep, depending on the pitch of your roof, you will likely need a perimeter bat to actually do that. So all I can say to you is ask your installers to provide you photos, photographic evidence before and after, and walk you through it all so that you can see what's actually been done up in your roof.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing that particularly in the lead up to this election and also just in general is cost of living, and draft proofing, insulation must be the absolute first step when it comes to energy efficiency and for electrifying our homes. And it must just put quite a lot of money back in our pockets.
Look, it's so interesting though, Nat, that you say that. Um, I'm asked all the time by how much will I save? So we are the only company that the Victorian state government has trusted to do retrofit and social housing. It's government programs are a minefield. We have we do all of the local council programs in Victoria. We've done trials up in New South Wales with Aboriginal housing in remote communities and things like that. It's 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 a no-brainer in terms of you know uh, stopping your house from leaking. But what we often find is that people's energy bills sometimes go up because they've never been able to afford to run the heating and cooling units in the past. That's a really, really big and common thing. And all of a sudden you end up with people thinking, oh, hang on, I can turn my heating on and it's not just escaping out into the ether. It's amazing. So we participated in Healthy Homes, the Healthy Homes program, which was an amazing, groundbreaking analysis run by the Victorian government. And what they talked about, the analysis wasn't around the cost savings. The analysis was around how healthy you could actually how healthy your home could be. Now, what they found, so once again, it was social housing, but what they found was there was on average, and this is data available out of Sustainability Victoria Healthy Homes program. There was a per person on average per annum medical expense saving of $863, and that was to the house. So that's not to Medicare, right? So that is just to the individual home. So yes, there's the absolutely there's just saving electricity and things like that, but that depends on how you run the rest of your house. Sorry, my apologies. Um, but there's also all of these other things like home comfort, like livability. Yeah, it's all that kind of thing thrown in as well.
We had a big question from Kerry who was glad to hear
Mm.
about insulation getting wet and about the draining
Oh
capacity
yeah.
of insulation. She also said she has lots of questions, so we're happy to email if needed, but talked about how her house is a weatherboard with pressed metal throughout,
Mm.
and I think there are gaps in the bottom of the walls. I know the walls are open at the top. So wondering if walls could be filled from the roof space and would the fill fall through the bottom? Also wondering how the power running through the wall space is impacted.
Okay, so what we do, we go in and we actually put block up that gap with polyester bats. Now, for what it's worth, in terms of underfloor insulation, we recommend polyester. The reason we do that is because it fully recovers if it gets wet. So if you think that you're going to burst a pipe, or sorry, none of us think we're going to burst a pipe, but it's far um, it's far more conducive to recover and to maintain your asset, basically. The sorry, can you we go back to it? Sorry. Oh, it was the water transference, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
so if we're going to talk about the the walls, I am sitting here at the moment in my house in Richmond. I We bought this during COVID. I had never had a box gutter in my life. We're sitting under these huge plane trees that are absolutely beautiful, but dump a mountain of stuff into the box gutter. We had torrential flood rains, and I literally had water sheeting down the inside the house. Now we had had this insulation done, the Envirowall insulation treatment done, and it was sodden. The plaster popped. It was just it was I can't even begin to tell you. It would have been an insurance job, except it was that bad in Victoria that we would have no hope of getting an insurance assessor. Mm. So I ended up just basically grabbing a dehumidifier and lifting the carpet and not too much else, pretty much. And the insulation completely dried out. So the silicone stops it from drawing the moisture and it just runs straight down. It's blocked up by the polyester bats and it just drains straight down through it. It doesn't drop through. My apologies. So sorry. I hope
You
that
need to go to
that answers your
bed,
question. Oh, I know. I've got this cough, right?
Lisa.
I think the second half was um yeah, she was also wondering how the power running through the wall space is impacted by getting
Oh, so
into this.
sorry. It doesn't impact it because um it's not solid. So basically there's still the conductivity is not impacted. Now what I'm going to do, because I have all the power of technical capability, I'm going to show you a photo. It doesn't because it's not solid, if it doesn't impact the conductivity, but it also doesn't it means that if you want to do more rewiring or something like that, that's perfectly fine because it's not solid. The electricians can actually just feed any cables down. And but what I'm going to show you, so who we had a gentleman who is a client of ours. We did his home a million years ago. and he and he has renovated his house recently. So the first part of the house, he took the plaster off the wall, and he. So I'm trying to find it. Sorry, Nick, if you're there, could you find Andrew Sweatman's post?
I'm here.
So
I think we could,
basically, he took the
like,
plaster off his wall. So do you mind finding it? Sorry, I'm having
can we
difficulty finding
share
it.
it maybe to the group when we send out the
Yeah.
thing? Because it's we've only got like 4 minutes
Oh,
left.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Oh,
great.
sorry.
Send it to us, and we will share. We will share
Show
it
you.
with.
Just show you. So you can see that you can see there's gaps. You can see that it's still quite fluid and yeah, all that kind of thing.
We had another great question from Elizabeth that said, if you already have insulation, how do you determine what grade you have, like if it's been done during like a previous renovation?
Oh, look, it's really hard for you to tell because so much of it actually depends on coverage. So you don't need to have a large lack of coverage to not to have a vast reduction in your R value. So if I have an R5, for example, in the roof, and I have about I don't know, like quite a relatively small percentage of non-coverage, I lose that. So the answer is if you look up into your roof and you don't have great coverage, you have a problem, right? In terms of you don't have a problem, you have an opportunity to actually improve it uh, vastly. Because once again, going back to my comment, heat will run to where there's a gap. Sorry.
But
I'm sorry I've been
she's
coughing and
asking.
spluttering. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
we feel for you, Felicia. We really are feeling for you. We've got, but the other bit from Elizabeth is, but what number if you do
No,
have
you're
great?
right.
What number if you do have great coverage
Sorry,
is that's the
I
other
missed
piece.
that.
What number if you do have great coverage is the other piece to Elizabeth's question. And then we've got one from Jody that says, hi, from Northwest Victoria. I'm having trouble finding evaporative vent covers for a 6-section vent. Any ideas? Oh,
Okay.
I
Okay, so
maybe
going back so you can give me back the insulation question again? Sorry, what was the insulation question again?
so,
So we had a
Elizabeth,
bit of a breakup.
yep, Elizabeth's second bit is, but what number if you do have great coverage?
So in terms of, sorry, you're asking me what R value should you have?
Yeah, it was just following on from Bree's the question. Elizabeth said, if you already have insulation, how do you determine what grade you have if done during a renovation? And then the second bit of that was, but what number if you do have great coverage?
Uh, Look, I mean, to be honest with you, now at the moment, R6, we couldn't sell R6.
I think
Anyone who had big, because quite frankly, um, the climate is changing, and half of what you, as I said before, half of the spend is in the labour to actually spend another couple of $100 and get a higher R value, I think would be prudent.
you know,
Oh,
I think
have I disappeared?
I'm so sorry. I think Felicia, your internet's just cutting out too much right this moment. And I think there's a few more questions in the chat. Can we send them? Yep. We'll send them to Felicia and we will get them answered and we'll send links to everything that we talked about tonight. And because I know that there was Tracy asked if we can provide the link to the analysis. And so we'll make sure everything gets covered. And thank you. Bree, did you want to say anything more?
No, yeah, pretty much was just going to reiterate that we'll send out the recording and also any of the links and things that Felicia mentioned. So hopefully you can do a bit of reading.
And ladies, please send through any of your questions, and we'll come back and we'll share it back to the group. And because obviously we're trying to cover everything in a very, very short period of time. So, and my apologies for the coughing, and my gratitude for you coming on this evening and hearing from us.
Yeah, I mean, we love partnering with you guys, and with you with Enviroflex, and we will send out as much information as we can. And before you all leave, so thank you, Felicia, and thank you for hanging in there while you've been coughing. Yes, you need to go to bed and have some lemon and honey. But I just wanted to say before we finish off that our She Votes campaign has got another few weeks to go because it's right up to the election. And we would really love you all to be involved. If you haven't already, yes, and if you can, could you join She Votes? There's 3 things that you can do. You can just share our She Votes messaging and our beautiful images across your social media channels and get that message out there. You can have a get together with some other women in your community. It can just be one other woman. It can be a group. We'll send you an awesome toolkit which has questions and ideas and what to talk about in the lead up to the election and what to look out for when it comes to how you vote and who you vote for, and are you voting for climate and for affordable energy. And the third thing is a toolkit on how you go and chat to your candidate if you're out and about. So any of those or all of those, we've got all the resources. Bree's put it in the chat, I think. Yep, there it is. It's in the chat. Join up. We love having you involved with our Women Power program. We love having you involved with 1 Million Women. Thank you so much. It means everything to us. And yeah, we'll see you in the next Zoom session and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Natalie.
Exactly.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Bree.
Bye, everybody. Bye. There's one new message. What was that? Oh, bye. Bye, Kerry. Bye, Lisa. Bye, Kathy. Oh, Lisa. Bye from hi to the UK and bye. Bye, everyone. See you later. Bye, Susie. Bye.